Welcome back to my channel, everybody. I hope you're all doing well today. I'm going to talk about the Akashic Records today. So the idea here is I have my notes here because I will be going all over the place otherwise. Like what are the Akashic Records and how do they help and how they help break patterns, right? So a lot of the things that people come to me for a reading are very much about understanding, obviously, soul contracts, and I'll do a whole other video around that. I want to go really deep into soul contracts, understanding how obviously how I connect to it in the records, but really understanding what a soul contract is. And under that theme, we could go into, understanding soulmates and different soul contracts and karmic things. Um, but how the Akashic records work and really how they can help change and shift things in your life. For some people, reading can be really life-changing because it helps them understand things and let go of things. And obviously, when we're in the records, we're connected to like a higher vibrational energy. And that in itself helps shift lots of things and helps us feel different, helps us feel more connected to ourselves, our higher self, our soul, and all those things. So, the question that a lot of people ask about are about patterns and things. So a reading's really good for anybody that might feel stuck, right? Is this question of like, have you ever felt stuck in a relationship, felt stuck in your life, felt stuck in a pattern, felt stuck in, a place, a physical place too, right? Because I think a lot of times it could be very physical, mental, or emotional, or a situation that just kind of repeats itself over and over again. And you're like, what is happening? I don't understand how to get out of this. I want to change it, but I feel like I can't, right? Um, And a lot of times the answer can come through a reading like an Akashic record reading, right? I'm not saying this is the only way you can get that information, but I think a lot of times it's a really good outlet and tool to understand things from very many different layers. So I'm just going to go into my notes here. And obviously, you guys know I'm an Akashic record reader. I'm a family constellation practitioner. I work with flower essences. I do psychic and mediumship readings as well. And I really work and help people see patterns, break through patterns, help them get to a place of more understanding and self-love so they can heal themselves. And this channel really is to help bring more awareness to these tools, but help you also understand how you can work through things. Because I think a lot of times, we've tried it all. We don't know what else to do. And a lot of times it just starts with having the information. I think this is where reading can help. And like I said, it can help move energy as well. But this is also why I brought on board and spent 2 years studying family constellations in order to feel like I could help people a little bit further, right? So the Akashic Records kind of gives us a deeper information on, or like insights on what's going on. It's almost like a behind the scenes view of the energy around certain patterns and things. And when we feel stuck, a lot of times we consciously are aware of it, right? Like we understand that something's going on. We understand that the situation keeps repeating, and this can come in through relationships, work, family things, right? Or decisions that we make. And you're like, how did I end up in the same place I was with the situation that was before this one? Like relationships are really good, I think, mirror or example of we may even meet somebody and be like, wow, this feels different. But all of a sudden, as time goes by, you realize this is the same pattern. How did I not see it? And almost we get into this energy sometimes. This is my pattern, at least a lot of times of not understanding myself and why it was happening. And this is where when the Akashic records came into my life, I started seeing things and feeling more compassion towards myself and understanding I was breaking a cycle a lot of times in my family. And it can go so deep, right? So I think, these readings aren't about I think a lot of people can come to a reading and be like, I just don't want this to happen anymore. And that's great. You're done. You want to move on. You want something different. You want a different, um, you want to live differently. You want to feel differently. But we have to understand why that's happening. So this is where you can ask in let's put the example of like a relationship, right? Why do I keep attracting these relationships where I constantly feel abandoned, for example? Or why do I keep um, attracting these relationships where I have to constantly choose myself? That could be like the other side of it, right? The abandonment might come from different places, right? It might come because you felt abandoned in some way growing up. Somebody in your family might have felt abandoned. There might be a karmic tie with that person where you abandoned them, so they're here to abandon you in this life. I mean, this could be many things, or it could be a lot of things at the same time. Sometimes when these patterns and these emotions and when we feel really, really stuck, a lot of times I tend to find that there's a lot of karmic things there. So that's where we go like into past lives and reading. Like I always explain to people, Akashic records aren't past lives, past live readings, but they can be a reading where past lives come up because it's tied to something you're going through or living and that you need to heal. So bringing light or shedding light on a past life and a karmic pattern with that soul and help you understand what you need to kind of shift internally and to consciously start to see things, bring awareness to this pattern with a different energy and let it go, right? And then obviously we can go into deeper things in a if it's something ancestral, like for example, that you're carrying things from um, it might have been something your mom went through or your father went through or their parents went through or great grandparent went through, and it could have just been a theme in different ways, then obviously then we're talking about, working through that maybe through a family constellation. But I think for a lot of people, the records, what it can do and how it helps shift is help shift the perspective on the pattern, right? Um, it's almost like this energy of not trying to understand it from a like a logical or ego sense, like, and I think a lot of times when we are in that energy, and why I tell people like after reading, you have to let go of the information at some point, understand it, have compassion, bring awareness, you know, take your time, be patient, but at some point we have to get out of our head and start feeling into things and being able to change the story, not get stuck on that version of you or that part of you. It's starting to like start to act differently from that awareness, right? And I think a lot of times when we get too in our heads, it's like, this is happening to me. It's repeating again. We get angry, emotions come up, and that's okay. That's it's not right or wrong. It's more that we have to start to see it with more love and start to understand this is a cycle, a pattern you're breaking, and that a lot of things can come from soul contracts, right? And that a lot of times things will repeat until we can choose differently and not choose from our mind, choose from our heart and heal what's attached to that, right? So, I think a lot of times how a reading can help you shift is first through awareness and understanding the perspective, understanding it from a soul level, right? Like, what does your soul need to learn from feeling abandoned, for example, if we're using this relationship example, right? What does your soul need to get out of that? How is it helping? Like, for example, that relationship could be a mirror of something that you felt, like the abandonment you felt growing up, right? So it can help bring awareness to that. And that person doesn't have to be that mirror anymore once you deal with that yourself, right? It doesn't mean about changing the story because that's about accepting. And it's not about forgiving either. It's just I accept that that was my upbringing and that now I can't abandon myself through the relationships I bring in is what we're comfortable with, right? And a lot of times it is tough to break that cycle. And we just have to have compassion, patience, empathy towards ourselves and say, okay, this is something I'm learning to do differently. The same way it's like you're learning a new skill, something new in your life. It will take a little bit of time to feel through it and to live it out differently. But when we get too in our heads or we get frustrated, then we're not in that vibration to change that, right? But I think a lot of times I'm going to give like a really good example of how like information in the records has helped me, with heartache, I guess it could be, but it was pain that I was feeling with this relationship. This was a long time ago. I remember there's this connection with this person. It was the moment I met this person, I felt like I knew them. I was like, I know this. I remember seeing this person for the first time. I was like, I know this person. Like, I know this person. So somehow I've never met them in this life, but I know this person. So I knew, and this was before all this spirituality kind of came into my life, but I knew I was like just starting on this path of like getting readings and starting to connect to like this idea of like a soul and maybe past lives. Like that was like way that felt like I couldn't understand that at that point, I remember, but this was years, years ago. And I remember, you know, feeling abandoned by this person. We never were really in a relationship, but I felt so connected and felt this heartache when we were like almost like ripped apart. And I remember getting a reading, and this person that opened my records helped bring this information forward of a past life with this person and understanding what had happened in that past life and why I was feeling this heartache and almost like my it felt like my heart was ripped in two pieces. Even though I hadn't known this person very long and we hadn't even had that many interactions, but there was something pulling us together. And I understood at that point through that reading, it took me a little bit of time after that to kind of come to full closure and understand that that person had just come into my life to close a karmic cycle with them because we had been we had been separated. Something tragic had happened in a past life, and we had come back together to come, almost just like feel each other's energy and be together again. And then we could choose like consciously to walk our own paths. And we came into, I think, like this is the kind of way I feel it now. We came into each other's lives to kind of heal something. It was short. It was very intense, the way at least I experienced it more than this other person did, I believe. But that reading and that information helped me. It clicked something in me. My sister tells this story in like in different ways with certain relationship stuff she had gone through too years, years ago, and how that almost brought a closure. And this kind of gave me closure. It took me probably a couple more weeks to like integrate that information, understand it, and say, okay, I understand that this person, I understand. And when I remember that information coming through in the reading and saying, wow, like that makes so much sense. And I remember crying and shedding all this pain in that reading and almost like mourning for that past life and all that karmic stuff that I was carrying in my interactions with that person, understanding that all that pain I was feeling wasn't really about this life, it was about that past life and stuff that I was still not seeing and conscious of. And then it dissipated, right? It I did my mourning and I didn't hold back on that. I did like my I had my grief because there was a lot of pain in that past life. And that helped me heal something internally for myself, but also understand that there's nothing wrong with feeling this weird connection with people sometimes. Like this person was, in fact, like a soulmate in this life for me, and it has been a soulmate in many lives. And our souls recognized each other. There was a connection there that was fascinating, intense, and it felt amazing, but it wasn't there to stay forever. It was there to heal something from the past. And understanding that helped me release my ego and my expectations around, well, if I feel something, then something should happen or it should go this way, right? So I think information a lot of times can help us really heal things. I don't think I've ever given like a maybe like a solid example of that. I want to be more like in these videos that I'm starting to create now that I'm back on YouTube and back on, Instagram and TikTok, I really want to talk about experiences and things that I've been through or things that I've seen, maybe without really talking about people's experiences, but of things that I've seen and how people have healed and how it's helped them. Um, so yeah, I think obviously when we go into a reading, we have to be open to receiving that information and that person connecting and asking the right questions for that to come through. But there was a part of a pattern being broken there through that reading because I understood that there might have been more karmic things with other people in the past, but ultimately he also was a mirror to see my own abandonment because I felt abandoned by this person. I wasn't fully open to seeing it at that time. It only clicked like maybe a couple years ago of understanding this abandonment that I felt and how I also create that abandonment by the people that I attract into my life, and that I don't need that anymore, right? That I can start to take care of myself, see myself, validate myself so that the abandonment doesn't have to come through and somebody like showing up in my life and myself having to feel abandoned through somebody else. I hope that makes sense. But I think we can see patterns so beautifully in an Akashic record reading, especially when we're aware of them. A lot of times we can ask, like, are there any patterns that I'm not seeing that I need to look at right now to help me live in a way that feels more open, where I don't feel so stuck, where I can live more freely or more openly? That's a really good question. I mean, there's so many things that we can ask in a reading. It's just it's wonderful. But the idea is that we don't get stuck with that in our head, that we can process it emotionally, understand it obviously intellectually at that moment in time, and at some point we let go and we start to be more aware of what's happening outside of us and bringing it into ourselves so that we can like almost like we can understand it from the internal sense that when somebody triggers something, it's not about what they're doing or what we've created or if we've doing something right or wrong. It's more that, oh, this person's showing me something that I need to work through internally, emotionally, and maybe ancestrally, right? Because there's a lot of things that we may feel, and we know that we didn't feel abandoned growing up. We know that it's not necessarily a pattern in the sense of our or like myself, right? Like I wasn't abandoned. I felt fine. A lot of times we can find, at least I found this, like I didn't realize I had felt abandoned until I started going deeper into that. And it could be something very small that creates that abandonment. But many times it could come through a pattern, even ancestrally. And that comes up for me, at least I connect with that in an Akashic record reading, just because that's where my energy goes, right? So it's just fascinating breaking these patterns, but there has to be awareness, consciousness around it. Otherwise, how do we break a pattern if we don't even see it, right? It's it's wonderful. And I think we not only because the records brings that information in with so much unconditional love, awareness. There's no judgment, right? It's more like love and kindness and empathy and compassion and patience. It's like this is what's happening and it's okay. What do you choose now? What are you going to do moving forward? Are you ready to break that pattern? And that's your free will to do that or not. The records really helped create shifts. First, vibrationally, like I was saying earlier, right? Because we can feel into a different energy and we can connect to that empathy, that compassion, that non-judgment, that unconditional love in a reading, especially when we get read by somebody else, because I think a lot of times we can connect with that personally, but I think a lot of times we can get in our head a little bit. And when there's really deep things, it's wonderful for somebody else to read your records and for information to come through that way. So that vibrational energy that we're in when we're in a reading or getting read by somebody else is wonderful. And that helps shift things and helps us see, feel, and move through things differently. And another part of it is the awareness of understanding the tie to it. Where is it coming from? And I think this is such a good question to ask in Akashic record reading, right? Where is this coming from? Is there something I'm still not letting go of? Is this pattern showing me something that I haven't seen up to this point? Is there something I need to let go of? Is there something I still need to keep learning? How can I work through this pattern with more love, empathy, compassion, and patience towards myself? Is there anything that I'm not seeing at this point in time? Like these are just some layers. And when I say keep asking, keep going, don't stop, because I think a lot of times we can kind of just get stuck in one question and it's like keep asking, keep going deeper, keep going deeper. It's our job when we go into a reading with somebody to keep asking, right? And I mean, not all the time, but a lot of times I'll be like, you could ask this here, but it's up to you. I don't know how deep you want to go and what you're ready to hear, right? I can only kind of connect to the energy and say, hey, this could be a question you ask here. If you're open to it, go for it, right? So the vibration, the information, and then understanding. I think this is such another huge, it's like it's like this triangle, right? When we also understand the free will part of it when we're in the reading of it's your choice to break that cycle. First, by bringing healing to that part of your life or that thing that's happened to you or what you're holding on to ancestrally. And that could be doing something after the reading. That depends. Sometimes people let go of things in a reading itself, right? But a lot of times it's understanding and feeling into that free will aspect. Like you can choose differently. You have to be ready for it. You have to really be conscious of it first, understand it, move through it energetically, and then everything changes. Everything changes from there. The problem is, obviously, we're living this very 3D life. We're going through the motions. We have work, we have bills to pay. We're living our life. We get into almost like routines and patterns that we're not conscious. This is why meditation, breath work, and coming back into our bodies and really understanding and at a specific point in time in the day, which could be several times a day, really, of saying, how am I actually feeling right now? Is my body tight? Am I feeling okay? Am I feeling tired? Am I feeling like I need to stop and really breathe right now? That helps us kind of like reset us and helps us continue to keep doing the work. Our nervous system can't do it all. There's only so much it can process and take at one specific time or in a day, and we can't push ourselves to the point of burnout because that's when healing's first of all, awareness and healing become very, very difficult, if not impossible. It's a fine line sometimes, depending on what we're at, what's happening in our lives. We can be going through really difficult things. We can be struggling with our health. We can be struggling with very, very deep trauma from our upbringing or from our family. We have to be really honest with ourselves. And I think this is where I think a reading, sometimes when somebody decides to come and get a reading with me or with whoever, they're to a point where they're ready to hear. They want to ask, they want to understand. There might be a little bit of nervousness around it. That's okay. But that could just that itself, writing those questions down and being honest with yourself of how you're feeling and what's going on can be the start of the whole path of healing. Obviously, there's a lot more I can talk about here, but I kind of wanted to give some insight into how a reading can change your life and how it's helped me even heal this one thing I kind of mentioned here, right? The story of deep pain. Like the best way I could just, I remember just crying and more, I felt like I was mourning something and I couldn't understand why I was crying up for this person that was still here, but in one way or another, I just couldn't understand that deep pain. I remember like I didn't eat, barely ate for weeks. I was like, what's going on? There's something deeper here. And I think if we listen to our intuition, a lot of times it will tell us that there is something more there and that we need to understand it. And this is something that you should definitely ask in a reading because you can get the insight that you're looking for. And our intuition generally doesn't lie. If we know something's going on, there's probably something deeper there that we need to really look at. So, yeah, this is just kind of some insight and some thoughts I was having about readings because obviously I've talked very technically about the records, the Akashic records, and obviously I'm going to do more videos and more content around my own healing because I think it could be really helpful to understand how this works and how it's helped me. And I do that a lot, or I did that a lot in on the Soul Tribe podcast, but it's been paused for a bit now, so I figured I'd just bring that here. And obviously, I had thought a while back about bringing other healers on and talking about their own healing experiences, how they're healing their own things, and that might be a thing I do in the future, just as like a little podcast on here, maybe. I don't know what you guys think about that. Maybe comment below and let me know what you think. But yeah, it's I hope this information's helped in some way, helped you understand like what an Akashic record reading can help you look at and how it can help you shift and change and almost like a walk another path sometimes. It's wonderful. And obviously, you have family constellations, you have so many things that you can kind of work through. And even myself, like I do readings regularly with other readers. I get family constellations. As things come up, I work through them in family constellations. I bring things to, therapy. I've started like a different kind of therapy now, and it's been really wonderful. And I journal. And we have to stop because otherwise it's hard to process even the information that comes through a reading. How do we move through that afterwards? We have to be gentle and slow down. And that's also a lesson I'm constantly learning over and over again. So if you guys are curious about the Akashic Records, if you have any questions that you want me to answer through videos, or I could just, email me, comment below. I'm happy to start to create more shorter videos on the Akashic Record series as well. I have a list of things I'm going to go through. But I offer readings on Zoom. I offer family constellations on Zoom. I do workshops for family constellations as well, group workshops, all online, obviously. And yeah, if you guys are interested, I'm here. And I'm going to be going into another video very soon. I already have it all kind of just mapped out on how I'm going to kind of present it, and I have some content coming out this week as well on physical symptoms, right? If you guys are signed up to my newsletter, if not, I'll make sure I put the link below. Make sure you sign up because I'm starting to create content more around awareness and helping you guys understand different parts of healing through family constellations and the records. Um, I'm going to be talking a little bit about symptoms and things that come up in our body and what they can really mean sometimes when we're not finding answers through the conventional ways, right? And I'll be sharing a really personal story as well that I think can help you all as well. So, yes, I'm here if you guys have any questions. If you guys are interested in a reading, please reach out. And yeah, I'm hoping some of these videos really help you all kind of, you know, understand that this could be a tool to help you along your way as well. Sending you all a big hug. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.